Seeing through my calendar, it seems extremely difficult to find 1 hour of free time every day to read a book. While it is the right thing to do, for many, it's so hard to prioritize. But you've heard that rich and smart people are reading a few pages every day. Well, that's okay, it's a great habit to have if you can sustain it. But how do you get all that information in this beautiful head without the hustle of energy, time, and attention invested? This is where podcasts come into play. Let's check out the 3 reasons why podcasts work and how to make them stick. Podcasts are becoming the new way to learn. In the 21st century, overloaded with information, distraction, and hyperconnection, it's hard to find time to read a book. With the lack of attention, time, and brain energy, podcasts offer a viable, practical, and efficient way of education. Want it or not, it is the new kid on the block. In today's world, practicality matters, and podcasts are just that. Continuous learning is essential for both personal and professional growth. If that's the case, it doesn't matter how you manage to learn information, it's just important to do so. Education works like a stimulus. So besides providing new information that your brain learns and you can practically use and apply, education helps create momentum. So it sort of puts you in the state which gives you a set of different ideas and flows and builds a momentum of you thinking on this thing. This doesn't just teach you, but oftentimes inspires you. Through learning, we grow. We can't just function in the world. The world constantly changes and we need to adapt to it. By immersing yourself in an insightful conversation, you get to develop this momentum. There is something about the non-formality, the humanism of podcasts that makes you resonate with it on an emotional level. It's a person speaking. So first point why podcasts work is you learn more, you get inspired, and you create momentum. Point number 2 is efficiency or practicality. See, a lot of our lives are filled with leisure time or dead time, in which we don't really use our brains optimally. Our brains just wander in unwanted direction. We don't have the energy to do something productively, to focus at one single task and do something specific, but instead we're just ruminating a bit. And there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of times your brain needs some silence, some meditation, some journaling so it can reset. However, a lot of times, like when you're biking to work or when you're cooking or when you're doing the laundry, a lot of times there's a little bit of junk volume, a little bit of wasted time in which our brain just chatters, which we could use for getting extra, additional, insightful information. This is where podcasts come in play. It's when you don't have the focus and energy to do something like read a book or do quality work and look for a distraction. Instead of a distraction, you can have a quality podcast. We could use that time to learn new things in a way that didn't require that much attention and focus. Point number 3 is you get to listen to people way smarter than you. Most of the time you're listening to an expert in a specific field who knows a lot more than probably you and I do. That gives you an unparalleled access to knowledge. Imagine years worth of experience, insights, and mistakes just compactly packaged into a few minutes of human conversation. The value it offers is insane. Podcasts are the best ways to get to know those successful people and pick their brains. You get to see how they react to specific things, how they would solve a problem, what they did when they were faced with a similar challenge you're looking to overcome, etc. So the way I think about it is, I could either choose to sit in silence, which is almost impossible because our brains chatter a lot all the time. So first, either my brain chatter or the brain chatter of someone who's way smarter than me. So a communication between two experts which is insightful and has a lot of great information. At most times, I'd choose the second one. To make listening to podcasts stick, we need some structure. Just as with any school subject we'd have in class, there is a learning curve. We must set up a structure that allows us to track progress, concisely summarize main points, learn from it, and use it to improve our life. This is why I'll share a 5-step process to make learning with podcasts easier and more practical for you. I've known a lot about podcasts and even listened to a bunch of them before I started this thing, but I was always like a fitness enthusiast who goes on and off in the gym. Sometimes I would listen to them and sometimes I wouldn't, and I'd lose my motivation, focus, and momentum. And podcasts are no different. If we're in it, it's interesting. If we're not, we'll lose motivation and momentum. So what can you do to make this learning more consistent and effective? First is do quality research. So what are the topics, niches, and industries you're interested in? It could be a hobby, personal one, or it could be a career/business interest. So me personally, I'm into health and wellness and biohacking, and I'm into business and entrepreneurship most. I would search for the best experts and podcasts in this area, and I would pick at least 3 so I have a wider perception. Next step is to actually download them. Do not rely on internet connection, because oftentimes when internet is slow, there's a lot of friction and it's going to make listening to a podcast more of a burden. You really want to have your podcast downloaded, set within a specific folder, color code them, do whatever you need to remove friction so it's way easier to get to listen to one. Make the process faster and smoother. After having downloaded the podcast, you can set them up in a table or use an app like Notion or any other tool. It could be an Excel table, sort it out by category, and make a goal to listen to an X amount of podcasts in an X amount of time. First, look at your calendar and plan rationally. For me, listening to about 2 to 3 podcasts weekly in the areas of health and business seems pretty reasonable, so I mark it in my table. Every time I listen to one, I tick, and it gives me a sense of accomplishment seeing how many podcasts I've ticked off. Fourth step to learning anything is to summarize. So take the full conversation and stick it into a few bullet points. Just summarize the most important parts. It's a critical step to learning and memorizing things, because otherwise we're just listening to stuff we're gonna forget anyway. This way, you can go back and repeat it very quickly without needing to re-listen the podcast. Fifth step is action. Listening to podcasts and learning without applicability into your own life makes no sense. It's a waste of time. So you've learned new things, you want to try them out as quick as possible, of course considering they're relevant to your situation. It's like running on a treadmill. Yes, you lose some weight, but you won't get anywhere. You're just training, you're running, you don't get at a specific place. Well, with podcasts, you want to use what you know to actually see the improvements in your life. Try to take one small step, a little action from a podcast, and try to apply it into your life on a weekly basis. This is the magical way to use the power of podcasts: applicability. Before closing, I wanted to ask you a question. How would you like the idea of me turning this thing into a podcast? So speaking with influential people and experts in the area of health, fitness, longevity, and nutrition. I've been thinking about it and I want to gather information whether there's interest or not. If you've made it this far, you're rare. Thank you. Comment down below, yes, I'm interested for the podcasting, or no, not interested. I just want to see if someone would be interested in watching something like that. With me, of course, being the host. I think I can be a good host. I'll serve him a large glass of cold, refreshing ginger tea.